Thank you, Carrie. So I'm going to share my slides with you, and I'm going to move through these fairly quickly. I've got some Zoom polls that I've built into this, so they're anonymous polls, but you're going to get a chance to participate that way. And then, of course, questions at the end. This is a great topic to explore, by the way. I had a lot of fun just exploring some things and preparing it for today. And so I'll just want to zip through some of these, but the whole topic there of navigating your next career change, I think, is timely. And I'm going to give Carrie some credit on that. She's the one that prompted this particular topic. It's a great topic. So why have the conversation right now? And I thought I'd give you some reasons. Whenever I'm doing presentation work, I like to start with the problem at hand or the challenge at hand that we're trying to solve, and then maybe work through that. And so I'm going to try to do that as quickly as I can. But why have the conversation right now about career changes? And the reality is that I think first and foremost, we're all lifelong learners. We know a lot more at 36 years of age or whatever age we are right now than we did at 18 years of age, when we were really guessing about our best career choices. And so I think it just makes sense to just continue to think about how our careers might evolve, how they might change. And I think COVID-19 has definitely disrupted and upended everything: schedules, routines, work, relationships, and so forth. I know I'm struggling to kind of still reassemble that. And as I have conversations with other people, I find I'm not alone in that regard. So it's a good time to rethink a lot of things right now. In terms of employee engagement, going back to my HR roots, you see talk about the Great Resignation and people quietly quitting, and then people rethinking early retirement. A lot of that going on right now too. So engagement means that people are looking for that engagement. If they're not finding it in their current position, it's a good chance to rethink some things or question some things. So needs change, professions change, organizations change, economies change. In 2 years' time, we've gone from 1.9% inflation to 8.3% inflation. I know with retirees who are on fixed incomes, it's a really big challenge for them. And talking to them, it's a challenge for all of us, but I'm especially feeling for that group. We're going to talk about them in a second. And then opportunity knocks. Indeed.com lists 2.7 million jobs every month. That's a lot of possible job openings and possibilities to be considering that are out there. So those are some of the reasons. That's not an exhaustive list, but it's a list to certainly get us started with some of the reasons. When it comes to the Great Resignation, you've got 57 million Americans who quit their job between January 2021 and February of 2022. That's a lot of people who've stepped away from one job and started another one. And that's not stopped, because 1 in 5 workers plan to quit their jobs in 2022, which we're in the middle of still. And so it's still going on right now, according to one survey that was done. And the pandemic has really unleashed what I'm going to reframe as the Great Exploration. The Great Resignation is really the Great Exploration, as it gave people cause to really re-examine their personal and professional priorities and what those really should be. And people, when you drill down on this whole Great Resignation thing, or the Great Exploration, as I call it, people aren't just quitting their jobs. They're rejecting the idea that things like burnout, toxic workplaces, anxious commutes, the compromising of core values, etc., are the price that they need to pay for success. They're rethinking all that right now. And so people are using this as an opportunity for realignment. And it's interesting, the London School of Economics talks about the value in all this as they look for realignment. One of the things that's so critical there is looking at your own purposes and looking at your own personal mission, because employees who have discovered their purpose, they're 49% more likely to report intrinsic motivation, 33% more likely to express higher job satisfaction, and 25% more likely to go the extra mile. So, it's worth exploring. If you're having a little bit of a crisis and you're wondering, hey, this isn't as satisfying as it used to be, or maybe it's never been really that satisfying, I think people are using this as an opportunity to explore why that is. And I think that begins with the person. And so building on that a little bit, you've got also this concept of quietly quitting. And what is that? Quietly quitting is a situation where you don't outright quit the job that you're in, or the organization you work for, but you just quit the idea of going above and beyond. You only do what's in your job description and nothing more. And they call that quiet quitting. Gallup would call that disengagement, the Gallup organization in their research. So moving on to that point, Gallup talks a lot about employee engagement. You can see here the last 22 years of their research on that and what they found in terms of U.S. Employment. But Gallup defines employee engagement as the involvement and enthusiasm of employees in their workplace. And what they found is that engaged employees are actively helping, that they're the ones that are actively helping the organization that they work for accomplish its goals and objectives. And you can see it's sinking right now post-COVID. And some areas are being impacted more than others. So healthcare workers are definitely being most adversely impacted. We can understand that because they've been very taxed by this COVID experience and pandemic. Those in management and leadership have seen more significant declines in their engagement. So if you're in management or leadership in any segment, you've been probably more impacted than many other areas of employment. But those that are doing the best in all this are those who've been able to work remotely. And so they're still affected. It's still waning. It's still gone down in 2022 here, but they're not as affected as some of the others. So engagement's definitely on the decline. And you can see in this particular graph here, the green line depicts those that are engaged in their job. The blue line is actually, this is the group that's actively disengaged. They're actually working against the organization that they work for. And even if the high number there reported by Gallup back in 2020 was 36% of the U.S. workforce was engaged, still, I mean, what that means is that 64% of the workforce wasn't. That's not good. And this is why this research, I think, is so important. And our career choices definitely have an impact. So job changes and career changes. Let's talk a little bit about the difference there. Careers probably don't change as often as jobs do. Job changes are different. Job changes usually refer to a change of employers, and we see those more often than we see career changes. A career change is defined as a move from one type of work to another type of work, and it's a little less common. But the average person changes jobs, if you're just speaking just in terms of job changes, 12 times in their lifetime as of 2019. And they typically stay with their employer for 4.1 years, which it's not a long time. So my first question for you today is, a question I think appropriately gets us started is, how many job changes have you experienced? So let me see if I can give you a poll here, and this is anonymous. So how many job changes have you gone through in your lifetime? And I've given a couple ranges there: 0 to 2, 3 to 5, 6 to 12, or 13 or more job changes. So we're not talking about career changes yet. We're talking about just job changes themselves.
Joel, question.
Yeah.
Can you have a job change within a current employer?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Yes. So those would count. So thank you, Kathleen. I know it took me a while to count it up. for myself, and I'm in that 13 or more category. So I'm not voting, but I'm up in that group. So I've got 7 out of 8 of you that have. So I'm going to show you the poll results in each case. So let me do that. Let me share the results with you so you can see. So you can see it's pretty evenly spread. You know, we've got 2 of you in the 0 to 2 category, and of course, some of this is dependent on age and how far along you are in your career, and how, you know, if you make a good career choice at the beginning, there's nothing saying that you need to make any of these changes. But you can see the spread there is pretty even across those different categories. Interesting to take note of that, though. All right, so moving on. That's the first of the polls I've got for you today. I've got a few more of those. Job changes by age group. Really interesting stuff. You can see between 18 and 24, that's where most of the job changes happen. 5.7 times is the average there. When people are 25 to 34, you can see it declines by about half. So 2.4 times in that range. 2.9 times between 35 to 44. So midlife, we tend to make, there's a little bump there, tend to make more changes. And then you can see, though, from 45 to 52, 1.9 times. And then changes happen beyond that. And I think, you know, a couple trends here to just make note of is that people change jobs throughout their careers, though they do tend to diminish with age. But it's never too late to change. So if you're having aspirations about changing jobs, it's never too late to make those changes, and you're not alone. In terms of one interesting phenomenon, I thought I'd just and you can see the little check boxes on some of these slides, and that means that I've got a poll there to expose you to. But you know, retirees are returning to work, and it's interesting that going into COVID, 2 million Americans retired during the first 18 months of COVID and the pandemic. So they just took it as an opportunity to retire from the workforce. But a recent report from the AARP cited that data from Indeed employment website, and they found that 1.7 million Americans who have retired a year earlier have quietly returned to the workforce in 2022, and that represents just more than 3% of overall retirees, and it's expected to increase. It's expected to go up. They don't know by how much, but they're expecting retirees to return to the workforce. And so they're considering new jobs and new careers when they come back. They're not necessarily looking to do the same thing they did before, which is an interesting group entering the workforce, right? These are people with a lot of knowledge, a lot of skill that they've built over their careers, coming back into the workforce, potentially incredibly valuable. They may not want to work full time. So, you know, are you willing to take somebody in that vein who is interested in working part time? And some of the reasons are interesting for this. I think some of these will be no surprise, but inflation right now, 8.3%, is pretty significant. But you know, especially against the cost of living adjustment that just was made with Social Security this year. It was a nice change to 5.9%, but it still doesn't make up for the difference that we're seeing right now in inflation. Stock market woes are definitely something that that's driving some of this. Rise in remote work. It's easier for them to re-enter the workplace because there's remote opportunities there for those that are tech savvy. Rising costs, health costs are one of the reasons that are driving them back into the workplace. But the number one reason that's driving them back, at least in combination with other things, is social interaction. They're finding post-COVID that they want some social interaction, so they're coming back into the workforce to get some of that. And they don't want just any. They want something that's healthy that they can contribute to. So, and as far as polls concerning that, let me give you a second poll here. And the question I asked on this one is, have any of you changed your retirement plans? In other words, the time of retirement that's either projected or the time that you actually retired based on your circumstances? All right. So more of you have not changed than have changed, but you can see 3 out of 9. That's 30%. That's significant. And I think you're going to see more and more of this based on whatever happens with things like future. If we have more, hopefully not, but the reality is there could be future pandemics. The economy, things like that, definitely shape things in terms of these decisions that we're making. So, all right. So, moving on. It's been said, you'll see it out there, and I found it a couple different places that talks about the fact that people have changed careers 7 times during their lifetime. So 12 job changes, 7 career changes. But when I tried to get drilled down on that information, I found that the Labor Department's Bureau of Labor Statistics doesn't track career changes. So it's really hard to know what that number is. So we don't know, actually, near as I can find. It's interesting, though. The one thing we do know is that the average age of a person who changes their career is 39 years of age. So at midlife, if the average American lives between 74 and 78 years of age right now, midlife, at age 39, they're making changes roundabout. Here's the other thing that's interesting about this is that approximately half of those surveyed, half of Americans surveyed, are considering making a career change in 2022. That's 52% of people. And so I put another poll in here related to that, again, to see, get your input on this. And this is not me being scientific or doing any kind of academic research. I probably should have said that up front, but which of the following best describes your career aspirations at present? I'm presently content in my job and my career. I'm presently considering a change in my job, but or I'm presently considering a change in my job and career. So maybe you're changing your job, but not your career. Maybe you're considering changing your career. I'm actively planning and actually making a job and career change. So it's gone beyond just an aspiration for it. You're actually doing something about it. All right. Well, your employers will be glad to know that the majority of you, 5 out of 8, are presently content in your job and your career. And there's a smaller percentage that are looking right now at either changing their job or, but nobody's moved ahead with it, which is great. This is a timely presentation in that regard, because I'm going to give you some tips for this, and it's not an exhaustive list of tips, but I'm going to give you some tips on things specific to career change. And I try to build these presentations if I was, so that I was, if I was going through, and in need of this, what would be most meaningful for me. And certainly education comes back into it. So education and career changes are related to one another. Education and training is definitely critical to career change. We're going through a time right now where the cost of that education is being scrutinized more than ever. But the reality is that the more significant the change of careers, the more likely that further education is going to be required. And so that's what Roberts and other institutions of higher education are there for. And according to the Lumina Foundation data that is fairly recent, 38% of undergraduate students are over 25 years of age. So that demographic group is changing. 58% of them work while they're in school. 26% of them are raising families. I know with the MSL program, we tried to design it around these groups when I first came to Roberts, and around these needs. And because if this is the case with undergrads, it's even more the case with grad students. When I was overseeing the MSL program, the average age of a student going through the master's program at that time was between 34 and 37 years on the 12 years that I oversaw the program. So for those that with undergraduate degrees, it's interesting that 21% report using all of their education in their current job. 11% report using more than half of their education in their current job. 53% report using half or less of their education in their current job. So this education is getting used. And then 15% report not using none of their education in their current job. So let's do another poll with this. I think I've got one on this topic too. And let's see what your thoughts are in this regard. So what percentage of your college education are you presently making use of in a directional manner, not precisely, in your current job or career? Wow. Okay, so you can see what the results are here. You've got 56% of us using all of it. You've got 33% using more than half of it. So you've got, let's see, you got 89% of us using more than half, if not all, of our education. And then you've got another one of us that says, I'm using my education, but maybe less than half of it right now. And I think there's still, the great thing for me about a liberal arts education at the time I went through it was that there was a splash effect where it really helped. I always appreciated Roberts's focus on character, because I found that character piece affected almost any job that I went into. And so a focus on service, a focus on humility, I think serves you well wherever you go. And I appreciated that aspect of Roberts because I felt like that piece of my education benefited me in really any job I've ever been in. So, so let me stop sharing that. And okay, so moving on with education and career, the reality is that an education is still beneficial. Higher education continues to be an important driver of upward mobility. Job changes and career changes are both considered to be primary means of income growth and professional growth. And so that's tied to education. Over half of low-income students who enrolled at public and private universities moved up to one of the highest two income quintiles by the time that they reach their 30s. And so that's still the case. I think what's changed is the calculus. The real challenge right now is helping those who are considering career change figure out the best value in making an investment and furthering their education. So that's not just cost. It's not just money. It's time. It's energy. It's the debt you're taking on. Certainly that's front and center for us right now in the news. But I guess the question there is, is more education even necessary if you're going to make a career change? Maybe you don't need that. Maybe some training or certificate would suffice. And I think the institutes are really a means for Roberts to try and address that. And I'll let Carrie come back to that if she wants to at the question and answer piece. But I think, we have a lot available to us. And I think part of it is just making ourselves aware of what we have access to and costing that out ahead of time. So some of the reasons to consider career changes are wanting a new challenge. This is what some of the research has broken out. Here are the reasons that they found that people make career changes. Wanting a new challenge is at the top of the list. Doesn't mean it's the most popular, but it's certainly up there. Needing a bigger paycheck is at the top of the list. Wanting more recognition, looking for advancement opportunities, looking for promotions, things like that. Desiring less stress is a reason. Wanting more flexibility in the job, increasingly with the younger generations, that is important. Experiencing burnout in one's career. People just burn out and said, I've had enough of it. You see a lot of that in healthcare. You actually see a lot of that in ministry and surprisingly in nonprofits. People just burn out and they need a different focus. I remember one time thinking about having a bad day and I always used to, as a joke, keep a keep the phone number up for the National Tractor Trailer Truck Driving Institute in Syracuse up in it's still in my office at Roberts, just in case I have a really, really, really bad day. I thought, well, you know what? I can just drive my own truck, and there's something appealing about that. So, if I ever burned out, I suppose that was one of my backup plans. It's not what I'd recommend to anybody else, but I gave it some thought because actually long haul truck drivers, I don't know if you know this, but I watched it at Wegmans. They can make over $100,000 a year. It's a lonely job. You're on the road a lot, but it does pay. And then the last reason, looking for a new social network or a healthy work culture and atmosphere. So a lot of people, when they're looking for a change of careers, are looking to put themselves in a place with a better social network, a healthier work culture. So those are some of the reasons that you tend to see this. So I've got a couple polls here, and I thought I'd ask you a couple things in this regard here. So here's my question in this regard for all of you is if you were to make a career change, what would be the biggest hurdle? Well, actually, you know what? I'm getting ahead of myself. Here. Let me see. Let me back up a second. Let me end that poll, and I'll come back to that in a second. Let me move on a second, and then I'll pull you on this next one. Things to consider when you're changing careers. One of the things to consider when you're changing careers is your willingness to move up or move down in order to go up. A lot of times, if you're going to change careers, you got to go down to go up. And that's something you want to consider, and you have to ask yourself some of these questions. Training, what new skills and knowledge will be necessary if I'm going to make a career change? Location, would it involve a relocation? Would it involve a different commute time? Would there be an advantage or disadvantage? Can I telecommute? Is there a hybrid work environment for me? That's something to consider. The financial impacts, relocation costs, training costs, cost of living, changes, things like that. Family repercussions. Will key relationships benefit, or would they be more adversely impacted? I know we talk a lot about that with the grad students, that when they enroll for, the period of time that they're in school, it could strain relationships, but it's not forever. And so just, want them to be aware of that on the forefront. Used to talk about that in orientation. And then motivation. What are the reasons for the change? Are you running from something, or are you running to something? And I challenge people on this all the time. It's better to run to something than from something. And I just had two of our grad students who just quit a job and both of them got pretty significant pay increases to go into a new position. Both of them hated the new work environments they went into. And one of them took a lower position at the previous company that they were at in order to just get back there. And not sure where that's gone since, but if we don't think through it ahead of time, we can get ourselves in trouble. So let me go back to this poll here, and can you guys see this poll? No, hold on a second. Let me see if I can.
I just relaunched it for you.
Oh, thank you, Mary. Thank you. So if you were to make a career change, what would be the biggest hurdle for you? The need for more education, the financial risk, the sacrifice in time with spouse, family, the need for greater self-awareness, the challenge of the job search itself, or other. And this is multiple choice. So, you can choose, I think, one of these polls I set up, I gave you an option to choose multiple. So I'm not sure if this is it or not. I forget actually, but
looks like people can choose more than one. So
okay, thanks, Carrie.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because some of these might be really closely related in your mind, right? And
that was my thinking, I think, when I put it together.
Yeah,
but
so
yeah.
Put more than one if you need to.
Yeah.
And then other is always a nice choice if you're not sure what to say.
Yeah, I love sticking other in there because I use it all the time myself with these polls. So
I usually make the last one say, I don't know what to pick.
yeah. So boy, what a great, I mean, you can see the spread here is it's different for everybody. I mean, you've got between 2 and 5 who've listed each of these as hurdles. And there are hurdles, you know, that we have to overcome when we, especially when there's more hurdles with a career change than there are with a job change. So it's all worth thinking through and trying to anticipate. All right. So, you know, I thought I'd give you this slide because I used this with something else, and I wanted to give you an example of, you know, decision making. You know, when I face big decisions, I use tools like this. This is a force field diagram. I love to use them when I have to face a bigger choice. And so I was talking with a group of employers about this debate about whether to go strictly online and remote with their workforce or to require them to come back to work. And so I went and did a lot of research on this to try and figure out the pros and the cons of a remote workforce. And hybrid really wasn't being looked at here. We were looking at, do we go completely remote with our workforce for this particular these particular companies I was working with, or do you actually require them to come back into the workplace? And you can see with this particular tool, the way I use it, you can weight the different elements. And so the forces against that change versus the forces for that change. And this is a great tool to use whenever you're trying to consider 2 options. Okay. If you get 3 or more options, you can't use this tool, you can use others. But this tool I love when I'm trying to narrow it down to 2 options. And you can see that one of the things that really surprised us as we got into this was the fact that there were so many forces against, there were so many disadvantages. There were not only advantages, but disadvantages to going to a remote workforce. So you can see one of the things at the top of the list that I weighted so heavily because it's been found to be such a significant hurdle for organizations that are now fully remote is that it is so adverse to building and maintaining trust. Trust got eroded big time in COVID, even with good organizations. And so if you're going to go remote, just be prepared for the fact that to build trust with a remote workforce is incredibly difficult. If you do the research on it, you'll find that's the case. There's also this adverse psychosocial impact with regards to loneliness, isolation, blurred boundaries. There's an adverse impact on collaboration, problem solving, and being creative. More difficult to evaluate work, especially with problem employees. So this is from, again, an employer standpoint. But it's also easier for some people to feel overlooked as opposed to the pros on the other side. And you can see the pros are pretty big, and the pros outweighed the cons. You know, better work-life balance, decreased infrastructure costs for organizations. They love that. Increased productivity. The data was showing that the productivity went up initially. Greater pool of potential talent because you're not limited geographically. You can hire people from wherever you want to if you go this direction. And it may extend actually operational hours. People were willing to work longer hours when they were working remotely and being on call. And it eliminates commuting and carbon footprint. So I weighted each of these with their help. And you can see it came out 19.5 on one side versus 17 on the other. The primary takeaway for the employers that I was working with in this is that neither of these were where they wanted to go. They decided, you know, wow, we're kind of surprised that the scores are so close. In this, what the direction we went is towards a hybrid workforce. Which is interesting, you know, but if we hadn't waited out, I think it would be easy to go down one path and then end up feeling like down the road we made the wrong choice. Okay. And I think when you're considering a career change, you want to go through some tools like this. It's a big move. You don't want that to be a flippant thing that you don't want to have a bad day and decide, to go join Joel as a long haul truck driver just because you had a bad day at work, that's one in, 50 good days, it can sway us. And this kind of a decision-making tool just helps us frame it and keep perspective. So I wanted to give you some exposure to that. The best career changes, I can tell you right up front, based on the research I've done on this, are missional. And it starts with knowing yourself better. It also is about considering the career options that you have available to you, and then knowing the organization where those careers fall. So I love this particular diagram. This is a Japanese illustration called Ikijai. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it means my reason for being. And there's a piece of this that you're responsible for. I think it's a bigger burden on us as individuals making career choices than on the organizations we might potentially work for. But what can you do to make your next career change more meaningful and missional? Well, you can get better clarity in 4 areas. Clarify what you love. What are your values? And will this career allow you to live those better? Clarify what you're good at. What are your talents and what are your strengths? The Gallup organization loves to help with that. The Strengths Finder tool that they have. There's others, any kind of these self-assessments will give you, there's a ton of them. I put the grad students through at Roberts so that they come out with a really clear sense of what they're really good at. I think we need to know that. We're 3 times as productive in those areas that we have strengths in. And so we need to know what those are. The third area, clarify what the world needs, those needs of significance. And then clarify what you can be paid for. What are your career options? And so you can see, as you combine these circles, you get some interesting things. You combine a sense of what you love up there at the top with what the world needs. And from that, you get a sense of mission. You combine what you love with a sense of what you're really good at, and you're going to discover what your passions are. You combine what you're good at with what you can be paid for, and you can end up with a really good profession. And then you combine what you can be paid for with what the world needs, and you end up with a vocation. Okay. And so what you're trying to do is actually get all sense of all 4 of those and pull all of that together in the work that you're doing as much as you possibly can. And maybe you can't get there immediately. Maybe you build there over time. But this is a great concept, I think, for us to use in building our careers. And going back to the mission and purpose piece, I love this quote from T.D. Jakes. He says, if you can't figure out your purpose, figure out what your passions are. For your passion will lead you right into your purpose. And I found that's absolutely the case. If you can get at, that's why I work a lot with our students on values. If you can figure out what your value system is and what your core values are, you can determine that'll lead you to your mission and your purpose in life. So we definitely need to investigate things more, things like job shadowing. If you're considering a career change, go spend some time with somebody who works in that area. See if they'll let you do that, or at least have a conversation with them about what's a day in the life of a nurse like, if I'm considering a change to nursing. Informational interviews. Ask if you found a good company you'd like to work for and you're considering a career with that company, go do an informational interview. Ask them if you can interview them about what it's like to work there and what they enjoy about working there. And, we don't ask for those enough. At Wegmans, I used to do them. I'd get somebody that would call me and say, look, can I come in for an informational interview? And I would make time for that stuff because it's important for people to know what they're getting themselves into. Self-assessment, increased self-awareness go hand in hand. So self-assessment is definitely something you want to make use of here. Glassdoor.com, find out what do people have to say about these companies that you're considering working for. That's important. Job fairs, great place to go. Those have been around for years and you can do them virtually now, I understand in some ways, but I still love the face-to-face job fairs when you have a chance to go and just talk to employers. Use your networks, certainly. And you've got new networks and forms of those, expressions of those like LinkedIn and others. But then make sure you look at your best companies to work for lists in your area. especially with most of the employers now being smaller employers and they fly under the radar because they are so small. Go and look who makes that list and ask for an informational interview and explore possibilities with them. Okay, that's a great way to explore new possibilities. I'm going to put part of the burden on organizations here as I close out these slides. What can organizations do to help? In one of these articles I found that I thought was so important was this one by William Arruda. He talks about how to connect with your company's purpose and values. So once you know what your purpose or what your purpose is, what's the company's purpose that you want to work for or you're considering? Most employees, as this article found out in its research in Forbes magazine, aren't aware or connected with their company's purpose. In fact, 61% of employees don't even know what their company's mission statement is. And that's a huge missed opportunity for organizations. If they don't, at Wegmans, we hit them with that right off the bat, right? And of those who are aware of their company's mission statement, 57% aren't motivated by it. They could care less what it is because it doesn't mean anything to them. It's some vanilla statement. So your aspiring employees, your applicants, your current employees, they need to know why their work matters, and it needs to go beyond a paycheck. This all begins, with an organization's overarching mission and making sure that they're doing a good job of conveying that. So it's just some things as I close out this is my last slide, but get as close to Ikigai, your reason for being, as you can before you choose career 2, 3, or 7. Know what you're looking for and what you bring to the party when you're looking to make a change. Carefully consider this new phenomenon called clandestine contracting. This is the latest thing where you have people who are overemploying themselves, working one or more jobs to maximize financial security, or even to begin a new career without letting either one or both employers know that, you don't let them in on the secret is basically the whole idea with this. And this could be a great way to enhance income and incubate a new career. However, this can also lead to burnout and diminished engagement. The duration of the time that you do it, the number of hours that you do it really matters. So keep that in mind if you go down that trail. Carefully analyze and evaluate your decisions. And here's a question to ask yourself. Do you need a new career or maybe just a new job in a better setting? Or maybe you need just a 2-week vacation or a sabbatical. Maybe you don't need to change at all. Maybe you just need a break, or maybe that time away would give you the insight you needed as to whether it's one or the other. Consider advantages and disadvantages of working remotely, full-time or in a hybrid capacity before committing to do that. And then, do you need additional degrees, or would a certificate or a free open enrollment course suffice? I think the institutes are here to kind of help fill. I think there's an opportunity here that the institutes are trying to address, and so we'd love to help with that. So that's that. And so as far as questions and discussion, we've got some folks from Career Services here, and you may have some questions, and I'd be happy to engage on that. So what types of questions or comments or thoughts do you have on this?
We had a question from Mary in the chat, and the first question she asked was what type of questions would you encourage people to ask in regards to forces for and against?
Well, I think depending on the forces for and against remote working, or
Well, here, Joel, it was my question. I think, when I saw that slide, I liked it a lot, but I think if someone is trying to decide about a career change, the forces for and for again, like what sort of question? You hit a few of them. What do you think people should be asking themselves?
Here's my initial thoughts, and some others might have some thoughts on that too. I think I always loved asking people, what do you love about your job? What do you love about the work that you're doing? And then I'd ask them the opposite side of that. you know, when you're having a bad, what are the biggest challenges that come with this job? And, you know, it's interesting because a lot of times they'll clam up on that second one. And yet that second piece is just so critical. I mean, it's so important that we're upfront with people about, you know, especially if we're concerned with retaining them once we get them in the door. You know, let's paint a realistic picture. You know, this isn't Disneyland. And that's not, you know, we're not promising you Disneyland every day here. It's kind of the flip side of my favorite question when I was doing interviewing at Wegmans. I'd always ask somebody, tell me about a bad day you had and how you turned it around. And my grad students will say to me, why would you ask, that's your favorite question? I'm like, yeah. Why? Well, because number one, people don't know how to answer it. And it would discern for me who the best candidates were, because what I was looking for was, I want somebody that has the ability to turn that day around themselves. They're not looking for Wegmans to turn their bad days around. We're certainly willing to help them. We're certainly willing to supply an atmosphere that will help with that. But I'm not going to own their bad days every day they come to work. And the flip side of that is, you know, kind of the question you're asking the employer is, you know, if you're working as a nurse, what are the things you love about that job? And what are the things that, you know, when you go home at night, maybe cause you to tear up and really have a few struggles?
I'm wondering if you should also ask yourself, where are the gaps? What's missing? You know, it doesn't mean it's a significant, you know, obstacle or challenge you're facing, but just what's missing in your work life happiness or, you know, satisfaction.
That's good. That's good, Kathleen. Yeah. Yeah, I think, you know, it's like I say to the grad students all the time, you know, there's no perfect job out there. I mean, I worked for Wegmans and I loved it, you know, but there were days where, you know, I'd walk out of there and you know, struggling with, you know, I had to do terminations for a while at Wegmans, high level terms. And man, those are no fun. They called me the Velvet Hammer, and okay, give me a nice title. I know they used to say, well, Joel does it so well. Well, okay, even though I did it well, I didn't like doing it, you know.
Other questions people have before we wrap up?
Well, I was not necessarily a question, but a comment. I love that you talked about informational interviewing, because that is something that we promote a lot. And the other thing I was going to say, because this is homecoming weekend, right, or homecoming week, is that our alumni are a great source of career information and, you know, to do informational interviews with. So, you know, I encourage people to utilize our alumni network if that feels like a comfortable place to start, at least.
I would like to also point out a fun personal story that when Sarah was a student, she had to do an informational interview and interviewed me in alumni relations years ago. And here we are today. She is our assistant director, but she asked all the right questions and was really taking the initiative to look into, you know, what would it be like to be in this career. And I think it's so funny that that came full circle, because she's the perfect person for this job. So it works to do informational interviews. So success story right here.
Thank you for that anecdote, Michelle. That's perfect.
Yeah,
I see
that's
Glenn.
fantastic.
Yeah, I
Glenn's
was thinking
got
the
his
same
hand
thing.
raised. Sarah, you were going to share your story.
Mhm.
And Glenn, you
Sorry,
have
I beat you to it.
you have a question as well there, Glenn. I see you. I see that hand.
Okay, thank you. The reason I'm here today is post-capstone, I get a lot of questions about employment. So I advise them to go to the career center, but they ignore me most times, which really gets to me. So in addition to telling them that, I tend to advise, if you're young and below a certain age, the government is a great place to work. where you can make tons of money short term, but you may be brain dead before you leave. So I say you have to consider that. The pay and the benefits are really awesome. You may have to move Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia. So why do I know all this? That's where I had it mapped out before God interrupted me and decided to bring me at Roberts. So the idea is that there are a lot of students out there post-graduation still don't have a clue after all we have taught them about mission and servant leadership. And that, how do you pronounce it? Ikigaki? What is that chart? That's fantastic. I want to get my hands on that because I tell people passion is what's going to drive you finding a job. What would you get paid for when it feels like you're stealing, that you're not working hard, that the job becomes play, it's enjoyment. You can't wait to get up, to go to work, to start to execute the plans that you have. So when you get to that point, God has always blessed me with positions like that. And I'm trying to infuse that same attitude. Do not cheat your employer. Come up with great ideas, contribute to the process. In government, hard to do that. More likely in an enterprise that's profit-driven, you will find those rewards. So there's a balance between not-for-profit and for-profit. For-profit tends to listen to how can I save money and how can I make money. That's how I break down business. That's the dichotomy. It's a binary choice. So the idea is, so what can I tell students? I can't force them to come to the Career Center, but what can we do to help influence capstone grads to show up there, at least reach out? It drives me crazy. Reach out, please. Stop complaining about Roberts. We have the facilities, but you never reach out. So how do you expect change? And,
So the answer can come from Mary, Kathleen, or Joel on that one. How do we help these students? And this will be our last question. The time has gone by so quickly.
Well, I think, it is really just encouraging them. One of the things that not necessarily in the grad programs, Glenn, but in the undergraduate programs, we hope that faculty are integrating some kind of career development assignment into their curriculum that, it's not meant to be busy work, but we do believe career development is important, and we're going to include it in the curriculum.
Right.
In
some
Sarah
way. Had to do that interview with Michelle, right?
Right.
To do it for class, and then she learned, but we made her do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good. And I would just say this. Somebody just recently asked me, what's your greatest takeaway in leadership development? You've been doing it now for 25 years. When started Wegmans, now it's academic, and I said, here's my most profound takeaway: is it's far easier to steer motivation than it is to create it for somebody else. And you'll beat your head against the wall trying to do it. So what we need to do a better job of is helping people understand their own motivations, and learning to ask questions is part of that, but understand your own motivations. I think one of the greatest assets we have in a career center, or in our classrooms, is helping people with self-assessment. You don't have, when you're giving yourself feedback, you're a little less self-defensive. Oh, I can't believe I told myself that. That doesn't happen. We tell ourselves some things that we need to hear sometimes, and because we found it out through self-assessment, we've got a little clearer sense of it. We don't have the hurdles that we need. So I think the more we can help people with that, the more we can unleash people's own sense of their purpose and their mission in life, the better that they're going to be in terms of finding it for themselves. And I just want to say this, and kind of closing on this whole topic is, if you love your job, and many of you, based on some of the polling, seem to like where you're at, which is great, but I would say, don't ever shut down the ability to question in your mind, boy, I never thought about that career, never thought about that choice. Every single one of my career in the last 30 years, every single job that I've taken was because somebody else asked me to step into something that I didn't look at. And that's how I became manager of leadership development at Wegmans. The VP of the company approached me and said, I need a manager of leadership development, and you're my person. The position doesn't exist right now, and you're going to step into it, or at least I'd like you to. And so, so I think if you could if you do things excellently and you leave your possibilities open and you really learn about what your motives are, what drives you, what brings you the greatest contentment, what are you best at, I think we do a pretty good job of navigating life when we're equipped with those things. And I think some opportunities just come our way that way. It's not to say all of them do, but some of them do. And so that would be my suggestion in that regard. I hope that helps. And I hope this content helps people consider, possibilities that may still exist for you in your career.
Oh, this was fabulous, Joel. Thank you for your research, for the resources, for the visuals. Really excellent presentation for all of us. Thank you so much, everyone, for being a part of this event. We do want to invite you to join us for our last Institute talk, which will be on Thursday at noontime with Dr. Rebecca Letterman on turning conflict into compassionate curiosity. So that's going to be a great discussion on Thursday. Today's talk was sponsored by the Business Solutions Institute. On Thursday, that will be sponsored by the Intellectual and Spiritual Humility Institute. Kenny is going to put the link to that talk in the chat if you're not already registered and you want to join us for that chat on Thursday. There are also events happening all week and weekend as part of homecoming at Roberts University this fall. We're thrilled that we're back to in-person and online. So whether you're with us locally and you want to come in person or you want to join us more for virtual, Kenny's putting the link to all of the homecoming events in the chat. We're thrilled that you've joined us today. We're just getting the week kicked off, but there's so much to come. And both Michelle and Sarah are here who have put just tons of work into making an amazing experience. We hope you will come and enjoy catching up with friends, with professors and staff members. And we can't wait to see you at the next event. So have a great day. And thanks again to Joel. We appreciate you.